Did you know that your very first cup of coffee in the morning might be the very reason your blood sugar stays stubbornly high all day long? It sounds almost impossible, doesn't it? For decades, we have been conditioned to believe that coffee is a purely healthy habit, a ritual packed with antioxidants that protects our hearts and sharpens our minds. We see the headlines praising the caffeine molecule, and we assume that more is always better. But for seniors over the age of 60, the biological rules of the game change significantly. The way you drink that morning brew changes everything about your internal chemistry. It can either be a powerful, life-extending ally for your metabolism, or it can act as a silent, invisible trigger for a massive glucose spike that lasts for hours, even if you haven't eaten a single gram of sugar. The reality is that most people are making one critical, foundational mistake before they even leave their bedroom, and they have no idea why their energy is crashing by lunchtime or why they feel the heavy, brain-fog exhaustion in the late afternoon. I've spent the last few months diving deep into the latest clinical research specifically focused on senior metabolic health, and what I found in the data is going to fundamentally change how you look at your kitchen cabinet and your morning routine. Stay with me until the very end of this guide, because I'm going to show you a specific coffee add-on that acts like a natural biological shield for your cells. This one tiny low-cost adjustment can help keep your energy levels steady and your glucose numbers in a much healthier range. Don't take another sip of your drink until you see what the peer-reviewed science actually reveals about the aging body. If you're over 60, you might recognize a very specific, quiet kind of frustration that starts to settle in. You wake up feeling relatively okay, but shortly after your morning routine, that unexplained fatigue starts to creep in. Maybe you've noticed that your fasting glucose levels, the numbers you see on your monitor first thing in the morning, are slowly but surely drifting higher every single year, even though you try your hardest to eat right. You might feel that constant, nagging thirst or find yourself needing a long nap just an hour after finishing your lunch. I've read thousands of comments from people in our community who feel like they're losing a slow, uphill battle. They worry about their future independence and long-term cognitive health. It feels like you're doing all the heavy lifting, walking, cutting sweets, reading labels, but the numbers won't budge. If this sounds familiar, understand this. It's often not about a lack of willpower. It's about the complex biological signals you're sending your body in that very first hour of the day. Now, let's talk about what most people completely miss when they head to the coffee pot while still half asleep. When you wake up, your body performs a magnificent and complex chemical dance to transition you from sleep to wakefulness by producing a hormone called cortisol. Think of cortisol as your body's natural, built-in alarm clock. Its primary job is to wake you up and increase your alertness by signaling your liver to release a small, controlled amount of stored sugar or glucose into your bloodstream. This is a normal, healthy, and necessary process. But here is where the modern habit of immediate caffeine consumption creates a metabolic disaster for the senior body. Caffeine is a powerful pharmacological stimulant that mimics the effects of acute stress. If you pour a strong, concentrated cup of black coffee into your system while your natural cortisol levels are already at their physiological peak, you're essentially doubling down on that hormonal signal. You are telling your body that it is under extreme duress. For a younger person, the body possesses metabolic flexibility to buffer this sudden chemical stress. But as we cross the threshold of 60, our metabolic resilience often begins to decline. The clinical research suggests that this double hit of peak cortisol combined with a caffeine spike can force the liver to dump significantly more glucose into blood than you could ever actually use for energy. And since you haven't eaten a balanced breakfast yet, that excess sugar has nowhere to go. It just sits there, circulating in your veins, damaging your delicate blood vessels. This is the moment where your pancreas, the hard-working factory that produces insulin, is forced to go into overtime before the sun is even fully up in the sky. You are starting your entire day with a massive, artificial glucose spike, which sets a high floor for your blood sugar. This means your levels stay elevated for the next 12 hours, making it nearly impossible for them to return to a baseline state. This was the part that truly shocked me, how a single cup of coffee on an empty stomach can sabotage your metabolic health for the entire day. To illustrate how powerful this effect is, I recently analyzed a documented case study of a 68-year-old retired architect named Julian. Julian was a man of habit, very disciplined, very health-conscious. He loved his ritual of drinking a large mug of black coffee at 6 a.m. while reading the news. Like many seniors today, he thought he was being extra healthy by practicing intermittent fasting and waiting until 10 a.m. to have his first bite of food. However, when researchers equipped Julian with a continuous glucose monitor, the results were staggering. They found that Julian's blood sugar would jump by 30 to 40 points within just 20 minutes of that first sip, even though there was zero sugar in the cup. His aging body was reacting to the caffeine as if it were a physical emergency. The solution for Julian wasn't to give up his beloved coffee. The solution was simply to change the metabolic sequence of his morning. We had him start drinking 16 ounces of water first thing to hydrate, and then, most importantly, we had him eat a very small amount of clean protein, something as simple as 2 hard-boiled eggs, about 30 minutes before he touched his coffee. This tiny change acted as a metabolic cushion. The presence of protein in the stomach signaled to Julian's brain and liver that food was already available, which immediately calmed down the internal stress response. We also introduced a specific add-on, half a teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon. This acts as a natural insulin sensitizer, helping the cells stay responsive. Note that it must be Ceylon cinnamon, as common cassia varieties contain coumarin, which can be tough on the liver. When Julian finally had his coffee this way, those dangerous morning spikes almost completely disappeared. His energy became stable, and his morning jitters were replaced by a calm, focused clarity. Coffee itself is not the enemy. When you learn how to consume it correctly, it becomes one of the most effective tools in your metabolic arsenal. Coffee beans contain a potent compound known as chlorogenic acid. In nutrition science, we think of chlorogenic acid as a sort of traffic controller for your digestive tract. When these are present in your small intestine, they work to slow down the speed at which your body absorbs glucose from carbohydrates in your meals. This slow-release effect is exactly what you want if you're trying to manage your sugar levels. This is precisely why studies show that regular coffee drinkers often have better markers of heart health and insulin sensitivity. But there's a massive catch. These metabolic benefits are extremely fragile. They are not baked into the coffee regardless of how you drink it. These benefits can be completely destroyed by the way you prepare and time your cup. To preserve this medicine, you must always choose organic, medium roast beans and avoid the extra dark or instant varieties are often contaminated with mycotoxins, mold-related toxins that inflame the senior liver and impair glucose management. I've seen countless reports showing that many seniors are unknowingly sabotaging their own health. They reach for those sugar-free creamers or artificial sweeteners, thinking they're making the safe choice for a diabetic-friendly diet. But the latest science suggests that these laboratory-created additives can profoundly confuse your brain's reward centers and disrupt the delicate balance of your gut microbiome. Your gut plays a primary role in managing how you process every single calorie you eat. If that garden is disrupted by chemicals it doesn't recognize, your blood sugar becomes exponentially harder to regulate. Many people are genuinely horrified when they realize that their diet creamer is actually contributing to their insulin resistance, creating a leaky metabolism that can't handle sugar properly. What I am about to reveal next is perhaps the most counterintuitive part of this entire guide. Most people use coffee as a crutch to wake up, forcing their nervous system into gear before it's ready. But the real cutting-edge metabolic science points to a completely different golden window for your metabolism. It is a window of opportunity that occurs right before you sit down for the largest, most carbohydrate-heavy meal of your day. Before we dive into that timing, we must discuss the cinnamon hack. Adding a medicinal type of cinnamon to your brew is a definitive way to supercharge the protective effects. When you combine this precise ingredient with the correct biological timing, you create what researchers in the field of longevity call a metabolic shield. This isn't just about flavor. It's about altering the way your enzymes interact with sugar. Remember, it must be Ceylon cinnamon to avoid the liver-straining coumarin found in common varieties. There's a very specific and often ignored way that your body processes caffeine as you age. If you don't understand the concept of the half-life of your morning cup, you might be keeping your blood sugar artificially high while you're fast asleep. Most seniors think their sleep is fine because they can fall asleep, but their glucose monitors tell a different story of nighttime spikes and metabolic unrest. Let's look closer at this golden moment for coffee. The latest metabolic research suggests that the most strategic time for your blood sugar health is actually about 20 minutes before your largest meal, usually lunch or an early dinner. Remember those traffic controllers, the chlorogenic acids? These compounds need to be on site before the sugar arrives. If you drink a small, concentrated cup of plain, black coffee shortly before you sit down to eat, you are essentially setting up a biological barricade. When you eventually consume your meal, whether it includes potatoes, whole grain bread, or fruit, those coffee compounds are already active, waiting to slow down the rush of sugar into your bloodstream. A major university study tracked seniors who implemented this pre-meal shield strategy and found that the post-meal glucose spike was significantly lower and much more stable. But this metabolic shield only works if you aren't distracting your body with the wrong ingredients. I've spent a vast amount of time looking at the dietary habits of seniors, and frankly, what most people add to their coffee is a biological disaster. Many reach for sugar-free creamers or blue and yellow packets, genuinely believing they are being smart. Emerging research suggests these can actually trick your brain in a way that sabotages your weight. When your tongue tastes that extreme sweetness, your brain immediately expects a hit of energy and sends an urgent signal to your pancreas to pump out insulin. When that sugar never arrives, your insulin system gets confused and desensitized. Over time, this false alarm cycle can actually make your cells more resistant to insulin. It's like crying wolf to your metabolism every single day. I've seen reports from people who made a simple switch. They move away from artificial chemicals and transition to just a tiny bit of natural stevia or, even better, a small splash of high-quality, full-fat cream or a dash of MCT oil. They were amazed to find that their energy levels became much more stable. Why did this work? Because the small amount of natural fat helps to further slow down the absorption of caffeine into your bloodstream. It creates a slow burn effect rather than a flash crash. Your system knows exactly how to process natural ancestral fats, but often panics when confronted with modern, laboratory-created chemicals. This is where most people get it wrong. They trade a few harmless calories for a long-term metabolic nightmare. If you're watching this and thinking, I want to do this right, but I feel like I need a little more help to support my body, I want to share a resource with you. I have spent years researching botanical tools that help bridge the gap for seniors who are struggling to stabilize their glucose. I will leave a link in the description below and also in the first pinned comment with a specific recommendation that has been helping many people in our community stay on track. If you want to give your metabolism an extra, scientifically backed layer of support, make sure you check that out right now. Now, let's get back to the cinnamon hack and how to make your coffee even more effective. This is one of my favorite pieces of advice because it's simple and inexpensive and makes your kitchen smell like a gourmet bakery. Clinical research indicates that certain types of cinnamon contain bioactive compounds that help sensitize your cells. They actively help the rusty doors of your muscle cells open up so that glucose can enter and be burned for energy, instead of floating around in your blood vessels where it causes systemic inflammation. When you add about half a teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon directly to your dry coffee grounds before you brew them, you are creating a potent metabolic tonic. The hot water extracts those essential oils and carries them straight into your system. I want to share a story about a woman named Evelyn. Evelyn was 72 years old and a perfectionist with her diet. She ate nothing but salads and lean proteins, yet she still felt that heavy, suffocating sleepiness every single afternoon. She felt like a failure, like her body was giving up on her. When she discovered the research on the pre-meal shield and started having one small cup of black coffee exactly 20 minutes before her lunch, her entire quality of life shifted. She no longer needed that mandatory 2-hour nap. Her glucose monitor showed that her post-meal spikes were no longer jagged mountains. They had become small, manageable, rolling hills. She didn't have to give up her favorite foods. She simply learned how to gate them using the chemistry of her coffee. This leads us to the half-life of caffeine. As we move through our senior years, our liver enzymes responsible for breaking down stimulants become a bit less efficient. A cup of coffee that you drink at 3 p.m. is often still circulating in your bloodstream at midnight. You might think you're sleeping fine, but your body remains in a state of microstress. This lingering caffeine keeps your nocturnal cortisol levels slightly elevated all night long. What does cortisol do? It signals your liver to release sugar. This is a hidden reason why so many people wake up with high fasting glucose numbers in the morning, even when they haven't eaten a single carbohydrate for 12 hours. You are essentially sugaring yourself in your sleep. Without deep restorative rest, your insulin sensitivity drops significantly the very next day. It becomes a vicious cycle. If you're struggling with high morning numbers, I highly suggest setting a strict caffeine curfew at noon or 1 p.m. It is one of the most rewarding changes for your long-term health. There's another metabolic window that opens up right after exercise where coffee can actually become your best friend. When you engage in a brisk walk, some light gardening, or consistent movement, your muscles begin to act like a hungry sponge. They are actively searching for glucose in your blood to replenish energy stores. This is the exact moment when your body is naturally at its most sensitive to insulin. If you consume a small cup of plain, high-quality coffee within 30 minutes of finishing that physical activity, you might actually be supercharging that sponge effect. Caffeine, in this very specific post-exercise context, can help facilitate the transport of sugar from your bloodstream and drive it directly into your muscle cells even faster. Instead of that sugar sitting in your veins and causing oxidative damage, it goes exactly where it belongs, into your muscles to keep you strong and stable. This brings us to the Protection Triad. This is the 3-step system that synthesizes all of this science into a daily ritual. The first step is the protein buffer. Never let concentrated caffeine hit a completely empty stomach in the morning. The second step is a caffeine curfew. You must protect your deep sleep by stopping your intake by 1 p.m. And the third step is smart sourcing. Choose organic medium roast beans, which contain the highest levels of chlorogenic acid and the fewest toxins. Finally, I want to share a story about a man named Oliver. Oliver was 85 years old and felt that his health had slipped out of his hands. He was constantly exhausted, and his numbers were stubbornly high. He loved his afternoon coffee ritual, which always included a sugary biscuit. Instead of telling Oliver he had to give up his joy, we made 2 simple, strategic adjustments. We traded that sugary biscuit for a small handful of walnuts, which provided the healthy fats and protein his body was craving. Then we moved his coffee time to immediately after his daily 10-minute stroll. In just 2 short months, Oliver reported that the fog was finally lifting. He had more energy to work in his woodshop. He was playing with his grandkids again, and his morning fasting numbers began to stabilize for the first time in a decade. It wasn't about achieving perfection. It was about being strategically smart. Your body is a highly sophisticated, self-regulating system striving to find balance. High sugar readings and fatigue are just distress signals. Sometimes, the most effective thing you can do for your longevity isn't a radical overhaul. It's just changing the clock on your coffee or adding a bit of protein to your morning routine. These small, consistent wins add up to create a completely rejuvenated version of you. Always consult with your healthcare provider before making significant changes. If you are serious about taking absolute control of your glucose and you want every scientific advantage, I highly encourage you to check the link I provided in the description and in the first comment below. Which specific thing are you going to change about your coffee routine starting tomorrow? Are you going to implement the protein buffer, or are you going to commit to the caffeine curfew? Drop a comment below right now. I personally read through your comments, and I am always inspired by the plans you are making for your health. If you found this information valuable, please hit that like button and subscribe to the Metabolic Health Guide. Also, please take a moment to share this video with a friend or family member who worries about their sugar levels. Make sure you stay tuned for my very next video, where I'll be diving deep into the 5 healthy foods that are secretly causing massive, hidden glucose spikes in seniors. Take it 1 cup at a time, stay consistent, and your future self will thank you. I'm so glad we could spend this time together today. Take good care of yourself, and I will see you in the very next video.